welcome Performance the Injury Report. Been a while have the Euros going on right now, and I am joined, as always, by Dr. Mark Casimiro. What's going on, Mark?
What's up, Nick? How's it going?
It's going good. The Euros, right up your alley. Talking a little football, talking soccer. For any of you people out there following, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are seeing soccer is the largest sport, biggest sport in the world. We're going to jump right in because a lot of these guys who play Premier League and whatnot had some questions going in. And we'll play and we will get to that scary incident that happened on Saturday as well. So I'm going to jump right in. If you guys have any questions out there, remember, while you're listening, make sure that you put them down in the comments below. And Dr. Mark and I will get to those. If it doesn't have to be related to the Euros, it can be about somebody in your fantasy baseball team, or just you want to talk about Kyrie Irving or somebody like that who went down this weekend with what appears to be a pretty serious ankle injury. Just put those questions down in the comment below. But for time's sake, we're just going to be focusing on the Euros right now. But like I said, put them in the comments below and we'll get to your questions. So let's start right off, Mark. We got Kevin De Bruyne, Manchester City. He broke his nose. Talk about that, and if you think he'll be able to be back in the Euros with some sort of mask or anything like that. I know it's tough with soccer because they don't really let them do that. But talk about Kevin.
So Kevin De Bruyne, he had an injury in the Champions League final. He plays for Manchester City. So he had to be taken off the field and had to be substituted off. It looked like to me, looked like he had a concussion. But they actually dodged a bullet. He didn't have, or he hasn't been diagnosed with a concussion. Was diagnosed with like you said, a broken nose. So with that, he actually will have a protective face shield on. He missed their first game. He might miss their second game. The reports are that if he had to play for the second game, that he could play. But I'm wondering if the coaching staff, depending on how that everything unfolds with that group, they got a pretty easy, straightforward win in their first game. They might think that they feel comfortable without him in the lineup for the second game and not need him. But he should be able to play in every subsequent game after that. So he might miss these first two games, but then shouldn't be a problem there on after. He'll have a protective face shield on for all the games afterwards. And then the only thing with that is, he's got, like you said, Nick, he broke his nose. He's going to have protection with that face shield. So the only thing that would happen is if he had another hit to the head, or if he fell on it a certain way and re-injured it, had some bleeding, had to come off the field for that. Or, obviously if he's hitting, gets his hit head again, if he has a concussion or like another type of injury for that. So he should be good, which is good, because initially when the injury happened in the Champions League final, it did not look good for him being able to play for Belgium in this tournament. So good news that he just has the nose fracture, and he should be able to finish the rest of this tournament, maybe sit out that next game, but good to go after that.
That's good to hear. Now, I actually didn't realize they were allowed to wear the face masks.
Yep.
Are they very similar to the ones that the NBA players wear?
Pretty much. I mean, they might be made out of like different material, but pretty much the same thing. It'll just kind of go over his face here, his nose, keep his nose kind of protected. And pretty much the same thing. Like if you're thinking of like Rip Hamilton,
yep,
who used to play for the Pistons when he broke his nose and then he kept it after that. Pretty much the same look. It has a little European flair to it. So
I'll have to check it out. All right, let's keep it moving. We got Karim Benzema, forward for Real Madrid and France. He had a scary, it looked to be like a muscle injury. But it looks like he might have dodged a bullet. What are your thoughts on him?
So, yeah, I mean, it's his first call up to the national team in, I think, 10 or 11 years. Had a little bit of legal trouble way back when, which we don't have to get into. But the coach called him back. He's going to be, playing some of his best soccer at Real Madrid this past season. Really over the past, 3 seasons, been playing really well. He's a forward. I think this is important because, like you said, Nick, he had an apparent, muscle injury that had to pull him out of their last friendly before the tournament started. I think that we're going to see some muscle injuries during the tournament because the amount of games that these guys have played. They've played pretty much the same amount of games that they normally play, but they've condensed everything down into a shorter amount of time. So the wear and tear on their bodies is a little bit more than what would normally be at a tournament like this. So I think because of that, that's when you start seeing more non-contact injuries. that's when you start seeing more injuries like hamstring tears, groin tears or adductor tears, quad tears, those types of injuries that happen when we know athletes are fatigued. And so their ability of those muscles to kind of produce those big force production in those muscles goes out the window, and then they're going to be more apt to have some type of injury. So keep an eye on this. All the reports are saying that Karim Benzema is going to be fine. He's not going to have to miss any time, but things can change just like that when he gets on the field lunging for a ball or going into that sprint. So something that we want to keep an eye on for all the players, but especially Karim Benzema, who was a little bit of a scare going into this tournament, and now we'll see how he does in the tournament.
Yeah, something that we'll definitely have to keep an eye on. All right, on to the next one. We got Belgium, Timothy Castagna. Did I say that right?
I think so. Maybe French. It could be Flemish. I don't know, Nick. That sounded good to me.
Castagna. He's dealing with facial fractures as well. Talk about him and what his outlook looks like.
Yeah, so he actually got injured in Belgium's first game versus Russia over the weekend. Him and a player on Russia collided together, kind of a head-to-head kind of hit, or a head-to-head kind of collision. He looked a little groggy coming off the field. It looked like he might have had a concussion, but the reports are saying that he had 2 facial fractures. So I'm thinking he probably had like a nose fracture, just like Kevin De Bruyne did, but he also probably had an orbital fracture. So your orbital bone is this bone here where your eye socket is. That's all around here is your orbital bone. So obviously if you fracture that, you can have issues with your vision because there can be swelling. There could be muscle damage on top of that. I did see a report that said that they're classifying this as not only just a facial fracture, but also an eye injury. So I'm wondering if he has like some blurred vision as a result of the fracture or something else going on with that. So because of that, he's going to actually miss the whole tournament. Because he has an orbital fracture, you have to protect the eye. It's a little bit more dangerous. You can't really play with that right away. You need some healing time first. So he's going to be out of the tournament. The tournament's just going on for the next 3 weeks. He's not going to be able to participate. So rather than have him being on the team and not being able to participate, they're going to get someone else in there to replace him. Long term, he shouldn't have a problem with this. Now, he might need to wear a mask when his season for the clubs gets started back in August or September. At that point, he still might need to wear a mask for those first couple weeks or couple months back, depending what the healing looks like, depending how his eye injury goes, all those things. But he'll be able to play with that mask for 2 or 3 months once everything looks good. So it shouldn't have any effect on a long term, but kind of a tough situation. First game, getting subbed off in the first half, and obviously not being able to help his team moving forward.
Yeah, it's tough, especially when they have a big tournament like the Euros that they want to perform for their country and get in there and represent, and it stinks when they get injured like that. But glad to see that he'll make a full recovery and we'll be able to help his club team out. So Saturday we have a very scary situation. Denmark's Christian Eriksen collapses on the field, goes into cardiac arrest. Now, Mark, you're not only a PT but also an athletic trainer. So I feel like this is kind of up your alley when it comes to what happens on the field in a situation like this and what type of response needs to happen to ensure that this player's safety. They came out, they performed CPR. The game was delayed for a couple hours. I know that he sent a video to his team saying, finish out the game, which is great, which is a great sign. He is in stable condition. But talk about what possibly could have happened and what the response looks like from the ATs on the field in that moment.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. Before I do that, Nick, I want to get on my soapbox and just send a message to all the Rhode Island athletic directors out there and Massachusetts athletic directors about having an athletic trainer on your field for games. And this is exactly why you need an athletic trainer, right? So we always have those questions about costs and money and all those things, right? When that happens and you need someone on the field that's going to give great first aid and be able to do CPR and compressions and save people's lives, it's going to be out there a trainer, and you're not going to complain about the price it is to save lives. So just want to say that, right? Very important. All high school sporting events and middle school sporting events should have an athletic trainer, a licensed athletic trainer, so that if these situations arise, you are covered. Having said that, I'm going to step off my soapbox now. And so one very common thing for endurance athletes, you'll see it a lot in soccer players, you'll see it a lot in cyclists have this. Sometimes swimmers can have this, runners can have this, obviously long distance runners. You can get cardiac myopathy, which is basically like just an enlarging of the heart. The heart is a muscle, right? We can't forget that. The job of that muscle is to pump blood through your whole body. So just like other muscles, as you work that muscle and it gets worked, you can get hypertrophy of those muscle fibers. So those muscle fibers become bigger, they become stronger. So that can cause issues down the line. Now, it's important to note that Christian Eriksen had cardiac arrest. He didn't have a heart attack, he had cardiac arrest, right? So a heart attack signifies that there might be something wrong with the blood flow to the heart. Remember, the heart is a beating muscle. So to be able to beat and make those pumps, right, you need to have blood flow to those muscles, right? Just like if I was going to do bicep curls, I need to have good muscle blood flow to my biceps my biceps to be able to do that work. So for my heart to pump, I need to have good blood flow. So a heart attack is going to be a restriction in that blood flow to the heart. We're talking about cardiac arrest when it comes to Christian Eriksen. So that's something completely different. That's usually a mechanical problem, right? So people or athletes that have that cardiomyopathy, sometimes that's going to cause their left ventricle to become a little bit thicker and a little bit bigger. And that can cause issues with how the heart is pumping, right? That can cause issues with the rate at which the heart is pumping. Or, we have the atriums and you have the ventricles, right? So it should go lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. Atriums pump first, then ventricles. Now, sometimes if the ventricle is having an issue, you get the ventricle to pump first, and that causes the atriums to kind of do all sorts of crazy things. So we're talking about a mechanical issue with the heart, not so much a heart attack, a cardiac arrest. So with that, you're going to need an AED on the field, right? So athletic trainers usually have an AED. You put that AED on. The AED is going to tell you what kind of rhythm you have. If you have no rhythm, the AED is not going to work, right? What the AED does is it actually stops the heart completely. And then the hope is that your body will take it from there and restart the heart in a normal rhythm. Okay, so if you go down in the field, Nick, and I have an AED and I get my AED and we find out that your heart is not beating the way it should be beating, so no blood is getting pumped through the body, the AED is going to give you a shock to stop the heart. And then the hope is that your body will reinvigorate that heart, re-kickstart the heart, and you'll have normal rhythm, and then everything will function normally from there. So a lot of people think that the AED is supposed to bring your heart back to life, which is not the case. It's actually supposed to be kind of like a reset button. It stops the rhythm, so then your body will take over from there and restart it at a normal pace. So that tells me that when they went out on the field, if they didn't have an AED, they were doing compressions, tells me that his heart was not beating at all. Because if the heart isn't beating at all, the AED is not going to be able to do anything for you. So very scary moment. They were able to get him. It looked like, some of the pictures that were coming out when he left the field on the stretcher looked like he was conscious. But obviously you can tell when you're watching the broadcast, a lot of the players are kind of crying and consoling his girlfriend who was at the field at the time when it happened. They had the players surrounded him to kind of keep a little bit more privacy. So you couldn't really see what was going on, but that was after you already saw the athletic trainers and the medical staff doing compressions. The good news is that they were able to kind of get his heart started again, and he was conscious when he left the field. And now, by all reports, he's in the hospital. He's in stable condition, which is just excellent news, but definitely very, very scary. And I definitely had a bunch of text messages on my phone, like, are you watching this? And like, what do you think's going on? So we never want to see that with any sports, but it was good to see that the medical staff, the referee too, I would say that, Nick, the referee took about 10 seconds to realize that something was not right. We do know that soccer players sometimes can be a little bit dramatic when they go down the field. So I think kudos to the other players on the field, kudos to the refs who realized the situation was a little bit more dire, made that decision very quickly to get the medical personnel on the field right away. And I think that probably had a big deal in saving his life because we know when your heart's not beating, every second that passes without blood going into my brain can cause brain damage, can cause other issues. So really good job by everyone there that kind of realized that there was a problem, and then really good job by the medical staff of taking care of the player. And, by all reports now, the player is in stable condition.
I mean, like you said, hats off to everybody on the field for what they did to save his life. Now, I know this is probably the least of their worries or the last thing on their mind right now. But when something like this happens to a player, the player themselves is probably like, what happened? Why did this happen? And what can I do to get back out on the field? Now, if you were a betting man, I'd assume he's out for the rest of the Euro so they can figure out why this happened and what's going on. But do you think this is something that could potentially be career ending, or this is something that they're going to figure out why it happened, fix it, and then he's going to be able to get back out there?
This could potentially end his career, depending on what they find. He's obviously going to have to go into a lot of testing, cardiovascular testing, over these next several weeks to several months. It was only a few years ago that there was a game going on in England, and the same exact thing happened, and the player unfortunately did not make it. They were able to stabilize him on the field, but then when he went to the hospital, he ended up passing away at the hospital. So, this could happen again. Christian Eriksen could have this again if he's playing again. And again, the risk is that you're not coming back from it. So it certainly could cause the end of his career. There's been other players where they collapse and, they're able to go on and play again in their career. So it's one of those things that's kind of a case-by-case basis. He's obviously going to have to talk to his girlfriend and talk to his family, who are probably going to put pressure on him to maybe hang up his boots and go on to do something else that's going to be a little bit safer for him. So we can't forget the mental side of it, the emotional side of it, as well as the physical side. I don't really know, Nick. I would venture a guess to say that he's not going to play soccer again after something like this happening. But they're going to go through all their tests. I mean, these soccer players, they get EKGs almost every week. They're checking their heart all the time. They get blood work almost every week. So they're very, very closely monitored. But something like this is kind of hard to catch. And then once something like this happens, you really have to put the brakes on and kind of take a step back and make sure that everyone is safe and everyone's healthy, because obviously there's a lot more than just sports out there. So I don't think he's going to play again, but we'll have to wait and see. There is a chance that he could play again. Just depends.
Yeah, unfortunately, he won't be the first player that maybe has to end their career due to, heart issues that they found. I remember there was a college basketball player. His name's escaping right now. Isaiah.
Len Bias?
Well, Len Bias. Well, there is that one. But he did.
Reggie Lewis? Reggie Lewis is the other one for the Celtics.
They did lose their lives. But there was a college player who, right before the draft, they found, a heart issue. And it was nice. The NBA actually still drafted him as an honorary draft pick. But his career was done before it ever even started. And you feel bad, for athletes when, they've been working at this their whole lives, and luckily have not suffered a serious or life-ending issue that comes from this. But they've been playing with it all along undetected. And like I said, some of them were lucky enough to not lose their lives, but they found the issue, and it's ended their careers, and it's sad. But obviously we want, these people to not have to go through anything, that their families have to deal with. So I think hopefully they find out what caused this and they can fix it. But we're just wishing him a full recovery and hoping that he can get back on his feet for his family and his loved ones. Well, anybody out there, if you guys have questions, remember you got to put them in the comments below. So Dr. Mark and I talked, and we've got kind of a slow time of year. We have basketball playoffs, so that season's ending soon. We've got NHL playoffs, that season's ending soon. So we're really only going to have soccer and baseball to talk about. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do the injury report as needed. As big injuries happen, I'm going to hit up Mark and say, hey, Mark, we got to go live right now and talk about this injury. But you guys need to, know that you can reach out to us at any time. You can reach out to us at contact@performanceptri and send your messages in there, or find one of these videos and write them right in the comments below. And then once football season comes back around, where unfortunately there seems to be a little more consistency with injuries, every week we'll probably do a draft special before fantasy football drafts happen in August or early September. And then I'm sure we'll be doing pretty consistent injury reports weekly throughout the football season. But we can't answer your questions unless you ask them. So make sure to put them down below and to tune in. Mark, thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you very much, Nick. Everyone enjoy this next month of soccer summer tournaments. Can't get better than that.
Yeah, and if anything happens, Dr. Mark and I will be sure to be here to talk about it. So make sure you tune in. Have a good, happy, healthy, safe week. Peace, everybody.
Peace.